Hello, I'm George from Ireland. Thank you for returning to my channel. Make sure your comments were going along. And this is about the legacy bill regarding Northern Ireland. So there was some sort of act of parliament passed in the United Kingdom under the previous Conservative administration. Now, the Irish government vociferously opposed it. Nationalist groups in Northern Ireland likewise, and veterans groups, former men and women of the British Army, officers of the Royal Ulster Constabulary, that was the police in Northern Ireland 2001. They were mostly against, feeling it was unfair on them. It left them open to prosecution over allegations of things supposedly done over 50 years ago, where leaving terrorists off the hook and so on. Now, Boris Johnson, not someone for whom I have much time or respect. I remember reading an article of his years ago saying, okay, there's a crime committed by a soldier, there's a crime committed by a terrorist, but obviously not comparable because the soldier is going against orders. The terrorist is doing precisely what the terrorist organization wants him or her to do. Moreover, these soldiers are often acting when they see red in the heat of the moment, rather than terrorist attacks, which are meticulously plotted over months. All right. But so go on to this now. The Taoiseach Simon Harris, he is the one who's mostly leading Dublin's effort on this one. In case you don't know, Mr. Taoiseach, that's equivalent of Deputy Prime Minister, the Republic of Ireland, is literally successor in Irish. So the Wicklow man said there won't be any protections to prevent veterans of the Crown Forces facing prosecution. But they will be the same as anybody else, but you're going to have to speak to a commission and tell them everything. Now, the Republican movement in Ireland always like to pretend this was somehow akin to apartheid in South Africa, where nothing could be further from the truth. There's no Group Areas Act, there was no Immorality Act, no law against marriage between different groups. Nobody was forbidden to work for any organization or whatever, or to go to a certain park or school or university or whatever. So people can be promoted, demoted over people from another group. We're usually talking about denominations, as in Roman Catholics and Protestants, which broadly, and I must emphasize, broadly aligned with national identities. Irish, as in identifying with the Republic of Ireland; British, as in identifying with the United Kingdom. Of course, you could be both. I'm both. Even though I'm not from Northern Ireland, I'm from Cork, and so on. So there's a 10-page document and this about this. So it's renegotiated. Hilary Benn is now the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, even though he sits for a constituency in England. He thinks he's in Leeds. And his father, the late and unlamented Tony Benn, extreme left parliamentarian, who was in the cabinet when the troubles broke out, but later came to want to betray the people of Northern Ireland, to deny them democracy, to expel them from the United Kingdom, to make them join the Irish Republic when we were poorer, when we had fewer civil rights, and so on. So an absolute monster, a bigot, pro-terrorist, took the side of every enemy the United Kingdom ever had since 1945, and so on. So this is the new Legacy Act will repeal the Legacy Act passed in 2023. Anyway, so the Irish government was going to take a case against the United Kingdom, the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg, which is not to be confused with the European Court of Justice in Luxembourg. The ECHR is not a European Union court. Very often it's mistaken for that, okay? Because the ECHR goes back to 1950, when the European Convention on Human Rights was finalized, was signed by member states, and every European country except Russia and Belarus has ratified it at the broadest definition of Europe, Iceland to Azerbaijan. But the thing is, there's no enforcement. And Russia, when they were in it, they were in breach of thousands of rulings. Turkey still is, Azerbaijan still is. And the United Kingdom is one of the few which scrupulously abides by its rulings, even when they're completely pro-terrorist and against peaceable people, against those who are trying to protect the public, and so on. So no, I'm not obliged to agree with every judgment of every court. All right. So this is going forward. Now, I'm not so, although yeah, I'm on the side of security forces in the Republic of Ireland, in the United Kingdom, Garda Síochána, RUC, whoever. Now it's the police service in Northern Ireland, and indeed the armies of both sovereign states. Well, Republic, we're not really sovereign because we're in the EU. I recognise that it's foolish to assume that nobody in security forces ever did wrong. Of course, it's possible they did wrong, and we know that some that did wrong were convicted of various crimes. And so I don't take this ridiculous view as patriotic to think that somebody in the army, the police, whatever, is automatically innocent, that every accusation is totally bogus. They're going to be some bad people who get into the army and police, and they get power, and power go to their heads. And there's this clothed cognizance of putting on a uniform and thinking you should be a hard man and scare people. And obviously, some bullying in the army, and those to whom evil is done do evil in return. Some of them are recruited straight from Borstals. So and they were furious. They tend to see this as a battle, and they used excessive force, and they used sometimes force which wasn't just excessive, which is totally unnecessary. So, and obviously, if they commit crimes, they should have been prosecuted. However, I thought after the Good Friday Agreement, when former terrorists are almost never prosecuted, we should. Why don't we just do this? Anyone who committed any crime in relation to the conflict up until Good Friday 1998 will not be prosecuted, and that is across the board. But because people are saying, how come these veterans are charged with various crimes, but other people are not? The one thing is, if we go back to things in the late 60s, early 70s, so many of the witnesses are dead. So harder to prosecute, and memories fade, even those who are alive. Memory's unreliable. Some people have got dementia who witness things. The other point, though, is forensic science is advanced. You can now get DNA off things you couldn't get off DNA before. So sometimes there's stronger evidence than there was before. Okay, so people are going to give evidence to a certain commission. Some people who are still alive will be unfit to stand trial, partly because they're senile now, and so on. So there's a commission to investigate these things, but people who don't cooperate could be prosecuted. Obviously, the Republican movement and indeed the SDLP, they're saying, oh, we have to prosecute all the members of the RUC, former Royal Ulster Constabulary, or the Army, or the Ulster Defence Regiment, which is sort of part timers in the British Army, local men or women, over allegations. But the Irish National Liberation Army, Irish Republican Army must never be prosecuted. The Loyalist terrorists likewise, and the Loyalist terrorists were absolutely vile. So this is how they're trying to move forward. But it seems to be quite amicable between the two. Now, RTE, that's Radio Television Éireann, the main broadcaster in the Irish Republic, is reported this very extensively. The BBC less so, partly because obviously Northern Ireland is only 3% of the UK population. If you look at Ireland as a whole, Northern Ireland is about 30% of the population, so much bigger for Ireland. If you look at the whole of Ireland, you look at the whole of the United Kingdom. There'll be an independent commission for reconciliation and information recovery. What happened? Whom did what to whom? Where's he, she buried? And obviously, the IRA kidnapped, murdered people, and that disappeared. Some of the bodies have never been recovered. It's ongoing trauma of the families. It's a lack of what's known as closure. Sometimes the corpses have been discovered, usually not because the Republican movement has been remotely helpful, and so on. Okay, so they want people to be cooperative so we can put all this to bed. There is another way to deal with it, and that's how we did so in Southern Ireland after the Civil War of 1922 to 23, is we just forgot about it. We just stopped talking about it. We moved forward. We're never going to agree about the past. It's just reopening old wounds, and the old style way of dealing with it, and some of the better way of dealing with it is to bury it. And we can have a shared future. We're not going to completely agree on that future. We can cooperate, but let's not go raising Cain. Let it heal. Stop picking at the scab. What do you think?